For 51 weeks of the year, this is a typical, sleepy Gloucestershire village, albeit the home of the 11th Duke of Beaufort and his famous pack of foxhounds. But for 1 week there is an invasion like no other of horse boxes, elite equine flesh and the accompanying eventing set that transforms this tranquil setting into one of the world's biggest outdoor sporting occasions. This is Badminton, and its famous three-day event is just around the corner. Morning.
Morning.
Thank you very much.
120.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Badminton, unlike many small villages, has a thriving village shop and post office, no doubt aided and abetted by the increase in income throughout Horse Trials Week. And on the other side of the road is the Badminton Horse Trials office, where director Hugh Thomas and his team plot, plan and prepare for this formidable annual event throughout the year. 2012 is, of course, London Olympics year, and it was the 10th Duke of Beaufort, or Master as he was affectionately known, who was so disappointed with the performance of the Great Britain eventing team at the last London Olympics in 1948 that he set up these very horse trials in order to help home riders improve their performances at eventing. Well, I'm delighted to be joined by director Hugh Thomas here in the village. Hugh, good morning.
Morning, Jamie.
How's everything going?
Well, this wonderful weather, of course, has made preparing for the event probably the easiest we've ever had. Putting up the grandstands, getting the tentage put up and so on, and indeed moving the enormous number of portable fences that we now use. So to that extent, it's been very, very good, and ticket sales are excellent. We all want it to rain, but I expect it'll wait until the event for that.
Well, I was keen to ask you, it's Olympic year. Does that affect your thought process when designing the cross-country course?
No, I don't think it makes a lot of difference nowadays. In the early years of badminton, there was a definite 4-year cycle with the course moving up until the most difficult year was the Olympic year and then starting again. But now we're very much trying to set a very consistent standard year by year, a standard that's probably going gently upwards all the time. But I'm also mindful of the fact that this course here could not be more different from what they're going to be faced with in Greenwich at the end of July, early August. Our course is flat, galloping, open. Greenwich is relatively small, very hilly, much more twisting and turning. So I couldn't emulate what they do, even if I knew what was there.
Well, of course, so many of these riders are so good now at riding across country. How do you keep testing them to the limit?
Well, I think we're probably not testing them right to the limit anymore. I think that used to be the idea, but nowadays I hope that a good proportion of the horses and riders we're going to see here will make the course look easy. But there will be enough who make the course look damn difficult for us to realise how good these people really are. If we get good conditions, then the best horses and riders will skip round it and do it for fun. But I think they'll find out there this year there's quite enough to make them scratch their head.
Well, Daisy Berkeley will be joining Hugh Thomas to walk the course, and she will be meeting us at Fence 3, the quarry.
The riders start as usual in the main arena, jumping Fence 1, the ASX crossover, before sweeping left-handed to Fence 2, the deer feeder. Then it's a long uphill gallop to the Horse Quest quarry.
Morning, Daisy.
Good morning, Hugh.
How are you?
I'm extremely well. Very nice to be here.
Very good to see you here again, and I'm sorry you're not riding, but anyway.
Anyway, and hopefully next year or the year after, so...
Come and have a look round.
Yeah.
I'd be very interested to see what you think, actually, because I've got quite a lot of new fences, but this is the good old quarry.
It's quite early on in the course, so I'm hoping they've got their horses under control at this stage, because that's a good old drop on the landing side.
It is. The log is a little bit further back from the drop than it has been sometimes in the past. So I think even the horses that jump pretty big will still land on the slope rather than right at the bottom of it. But if they do jump quite big over it, it'll take a lot of riding to be in balance and aiming at the next fence.
Yeah, so the people who lose their knitting might be vanishing off in the wrong direction.
Yeah, well, hopefully they won't go and jump the grassroots fences in the background by mistake. Shall we walk down to the bottom of the bank
That'd
anyway?
be great. Chairlifts and crampons at the ready.
As I say, this one isn't really, I mean, it's not really narrow by narrow standards, of modern narrow standards, but I just thought by making it a slightly shorter fence, it does just mean you've got to be in control the whole way through.
You have to be pretty disorganised to bypass this one, but it could easily happen early on with some over-enthusiastic competitors, I expect.
And then the third part is very straightforward indeed. I mean, horses always jump uphill very, very easily, and it's a nice log, so I don't think that'll cause anybody any anxiety at all, will it?
I would have thought so.
From the quarry, there is another long gallop to the first major test on the course, the ISH Studbook Huntsman's Close.
And of course, coming into the Huntsman's Close is a new fence this year, a biggish oxer. I don't know what you think about that. It's at the end of a long gallop, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Huntsman's Close, it is always a big old gallop from the quarry to here, and you do tend to, just as you cross the road over there, want to just give the horse a bit of a tug in the mouth and a kick in the ribs and just get him knowing that there's something quite important coming up, because this is quite a complex and there's an awful lot going on here.
Yes, there is. That's sort of, it's straightforward, there's nothing technical about it. You hopefully either jump it or you don't. But here we've got a bounce of brushes and then one stride to the angled log going out. I used the brushes here last year, but it was at the end of the course and there was nothing after it, so it's really a completely different question. I don't know, come and have a look at it.
I mean, I can see some quite interesting looking sights over this when horses jump this, because it's a big brush and they're still going to be pretty fresh, and I can see them going pretty airborne over these two, looking more like sort of something off the Serengeti than horses, probably doing vertical takeoffs and landings, and then they've still got to have enough balance and impulsion to get themselves organised in one stride to jump the final part, which is sort of lurking behind that tree. So I think they're going to have to be pretty organised, the riders here.
I think we ought to go and look at this this log going out, actually, because the relationship of that to the bounce, and we've never jumped that with anything near it before. Do you know what I mean? We've jumped it once or twice, but always with a long approach where you had tons of time to get organised.
And are you assuming that the horses, because they are fresh, will probably be more extravagant over the bounce than they were last year, which could then make it almost more difficult to sort yourself out to the last part?
I think horses will jump the bounce in every way there is.
Yeah.
And I think it's very, very difficult for us to predict. But one of the things when one's course designing nowadays at the top level, I think we're all moving to try and test the riding as much as the ability of the horse. And I'm always looking to produce unpredictable fences, i.e. fences where a rider cannot be absolutely certain what their horse is going to do. So they then have to adjust instantly and play it by ear a bit, or by the seat of the pants.
Yeah, true test of cross-country riding, that's what we want.
The course then heads back towards Badminton House, over the Wadsworth Barrels at fence 9, and then onto the lake, which this year has a very different look about it.
I'll be quite interested to see what you think of this, Daisy. It's a new fence here at the lake. I haven't actually had a fence on this particular slope before, and you can see that it's a biggish fence in and then a bit of a turn and a combination in the middle.
It's certainly a big piece of timber going in, and you say a bit of a turn, but I think when you've jumped a big fence like that into the water, I think that turn's going to be quite influential, and it's not just one little hedgehog brush thing you've got to get over, it's two, so you've got to make pretty sure you're straight for the first one. It does give me a slight sense of deja vu, because I remember the last Olympic year and I was feeling fairly confident and I overjumped into the water, and shot past one of your little hedgehog brushes. So I think people have to make damn sure that they don't make the same mistake I did, because it nearly cost me my place on the team. Yeah, it's a good test of control, balance, and actually bravery to get in the first place.
Generally, a lot of us are moving away from always having alternatives to every fence at a big event. But here, I think this is a true four-star question. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. It's a really serious one. And so I thought it really sensible to provide an alternative which involves coming in over that fairly straightforward log. It's still got a decent drop on it, you've got to pay attention to it. And then jumping up a step and out over the willow wave on a bounce stride. I think that is relatively straightforward for badminton, but it will take a lot longer, because then they have to do a great big circle in order to jump the Mitsubishi pickup trucks.
I can still see quite a few doing that option, because you'll have the people who've not got that much experience, so might think this might be a bit of a big ask. And I think you'll also get the people who have quite a lot to lose.
Yep.
Who just cannot afford that 20, because it could just affect them quite a lot in the long term. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a few creeping around the long route.
From the lake, the riders gallop down through the park, over the countryside brush top, and on to the Swindon designer outlet Sunken Road, where a very similar test to 2 years ago awaits. Then it's on to the HSI farmyard, where we rejoin Hugh and Daisy.
Well, as you know, this farmyard complex has been quite influential, particularly 2 years ago, which was when we introduced the double of corners with short back arms. And I decided to slightly ease off here this year, and partly it'd be interesting to see what you think later on in the course, but this whole Vicarage Fields area, I've slightly reduced the overall difficulty and put a bit more at the beginning and end of the course, so that not the whole competition isn't won and lost only in these 5 or 6 fences. So we're going to have the hay cart here, 2 strides, and then to this corner.
I mean, it is still a pretty hefty corner, and I know a lot of the riders definitely got the wibbles about a double of corners like this, and last year most of them seemed to take the alternative, which I suppose in a way is a shame. I think you'll get them more of them doing the direct route this time. But I mean, let's not take away from the corner. It's still a pretty tough one, and I'm sure you'll get a fair share of run-outs here as well.
Well, forget the odd one, which is all we really ever want, but the odd one will serve to concentrate everybody else's mind.
Exactly.
So after those corners, this is a straightforward enough portable log pile. It's quite big, but reason for having it quite big is that I've put it in front of the colt pond on a turn, so you don't want a fence here that the riders could literally pop over. You need to have something that they can have to jump in a reasonably expansive way in order for the turn to be relevant. But then a choice of where to jump this fence, there'll be 3 parts of it. There's no speed difference. It's really a matter of whether you like the bit on the right with the higher ground and a bigger drop, or the bit on the left with a slight slope to it, and then into the water. And we'll cut the brush. It'll be about there. It'll be.
It's still a pretty decent fence. Yeah. I mean, I've seen more tricky fences around this pond, but I mean, that's going to be a big enough brush going in. So I think you want your horse to be a good water jumper. But the one good thing about it being this way round is you've already had your feet wet at the lake. Yep. So they're not coming first time to water, which I always think is a huge help this way round.
Oh, so that, yes, I see what you mean. The pond is always easier this way round than it is the other way round. I think that's probably right. And after it, they're going to go up to where the hexagon hedges were, which I'm sure you've jumped. But I've taken those away and reintroduced, probably going back 15, 20 years, a really big but straightforward footbridge at an angle across the ditch.
There'll be a few people who won't miss the hexagon hedges, but we haven't seen a big old footbridge for a while, so maybe this will terrify them instead.
So having jumped the new footbridge, hark back to the olden days, this I think is something completely different here at the Outlander Bank. I'm certainly not disclaiming responsibility, but we were down here in September, October looking around, and I was talking to Alan Willis, the course builder, about the fact that the log on top was rotting and we were going to have to replace it. And he said, why don't we put the owl hole on top? Well,
Why not?
never been done before, but it certainly looks pretty impressive up there.
It does, and I think a lot of people, this bank's been jumped for quite a long time now, so I think you need to vary the theme a bit, and I think it's going to, I don't know if it'll affect the way people ride it, but it might affect the way horses look at it, because it is quite an eyeful. I think you need to just have a little bit more, be a little bit more ready to give it a big kick, actually.
Yes, not for the faint-hearted.
No, and if they do jump it big, there is a good old slope on the far side. You want to make sure you're not going to fall off on landing if it pecks. I think it'll be quite a ride.
So then after they get through the hole and down the drop, you know, right-handed, bridge across the ditch, and then keep swinging around, good gallop, slightly downhill approach, but over that beam there, over the ditch. Actually, the ditch gives you a takeoff line, effectively, so I don't think anything ought to go wrong there. And then on up to the Shogun Hollow. Well, you've certainly seen this fence here before. We've had a number of things the other side of the hollow, but this fairly traditional, a rail which again will be mounted on frangible pins. The boxes will have some shrubbery in them to give it a little bit more body, but deliberately this year no alternative.
And I can sort of understand why you're going down that road, because even though it's your traditional nasty inn, you know, it's a proper coffin fence. You need to have that nice bouncy canter and not be too quick but punchy. But it seems a lot tamer on the way out, even though they're big box fences. We don't have the accuracy tests which we've had in the past.
Let's just actually walk through here and have a look at the hollow itself and the boxes coming out of them, because I'm asking for a certain amount of quite explosive effort to go up from here to what is a decent sized fence.
It is, and I mean, if they do happen to hang a leg at the first part, you're going to lose your impulsion and probably your distance to this one. So, you know, they could still catch a few people out.
And that's one of the reasons I've put a platform in the middle of the hedges here for the horse that does meet this on a wrong stride, maybe takes off where you're standing or,
Good luck.
or goes right in here. And at least they've got a safe thing to land on the way.
Yeah. But definitely not as tough as some years we've seen in the past.
No, I agree.
From the Shogun Hollow, there is the familiar long gallop back up to the inviting Rolex Grand Slam shooting butt, followed shortly by the Cabis table, and then onto the Hsbc marketplace, fence 22.
Well, this is the Hsbc Complex, which is in the same place but had a complete revamp, and I'm sure you'll want to walk through it to see what you think of it. The theory is that gate over there, followed by a corner to the right of the tree, followed by a corner to the left of the tree, going out into the avenue.
Yeah.
And there's a longer route, which is this gate, and then turn and jump a much, much smaller corner on the left, and turn and again jump a much, much smaller corner on the right. So I think honestly the only thing for you to do is literally walk right through the fence before we can talk about it very much.
Great. I'll have a butcher's. I mean, this looks to me like, I don't want to oversimplify it, but it's like a show jumping exercise. You have your upright related distance to the corner, right turn to the other corner. So I'll check out the distance. I mean, the thing about this being a show jumping exercise is that you're 3/4 the way around a cross-country course, so it's actually, you're not riding a show jumper anymore, you're riding an event horse who's going to have got long and flat. So this will probably be 5-6 strides to this corner and then a curving 4 to the other one, but your horse is going to be running on his head, so you've just got to make sure you've got petrol in the tank and you can keep it balanced and thinking and careful. And girls, watch your hairnet on the tree.
We'll take one or two of the little lower branches off,
Okay.
just to so you're not actually jumping through the tree at this
Yeah.
stage in the course.
I'll hold number 2.
The next fence, the Savills staircase, is exactly the same as 2 years ago. And the I-Me village is also very similar to the 2010 test. Then it's down over the well-known John Whittaker keeper's brush before the final technical question awaits at the Rolex Crossing.
So after the keeper's brush, we've put the fallen branch here in this clump of trees, really intended just to make riders continue to pay attention, keep the horse's attention as well, rather than gallop flat out for the finish.
Keep a bit of petrol in the tank.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. And then up here to the Rolex Crossing, which has had a bit of a facelift. We used to have 2 big tree trunks here, as you probably remember.
I probably don't remember it quite as well as poor Mary King did, because she had an unseating here when she, I think, damn near would have won it. So she'll be pleased to see it slightly changed.
Yes,
anyway.
Probably will. You can sort of half leave a leg or go through these a little bit, or big though they are. The interesting thing here is always the distance, because I may be proved wrong, but normally it's slightly uphill, late on in the course, with even the best horses towering a bit. They find these distances quite long. And so I've deliberately put that fence probably 3 or 4 feet closer than you would if it was on open flat ground.
Great. And Hugh, what time would you want on your stopwatch as you land from this to get through the finish in time?
I don't yet know exactly what the length of the course is, but I do know from previous years that landing over that fence, you've got to be through the finish in 30 seconds time.
Land and kick.
Land and kick, that's right.
Daisy knows only too well the elation that welcomes riders as they jump the Mitsubishi Motors finale in the packed arena at the end of this gruelling cross-country test. So how did she think this year's test compares with previous badminton cross-country courses?
Oh, I'm just very, very lucky to have actually had a look around here, because normally I'm not in this position. So it looks a lovely course. The ground at this stage looks fantastic. He's slightly changed a few things in that it's not quite as intense in the middle at the Vicarage Pond area, because that used to be quite a sort of a cauldron of tension, lots going on, and it's not quite as busy there, but it looks a really good fun course. Obviously the ground on the day will make a big difference, whether it's going to be fast, whether it's going to be muddy. Some people would be desperate for muddy to slow down the dressage queens, and other people would like it top of the ground, so I can't wait to see what the result is at the end of the day.
Well, the cross-country course here at Badminton will be very different for the one we find at Greenwich for the Olympics, but there will be many a rider wanting to catch the selectors' eyes here at Badminton, where Olympic dreams will be made or broken. Bring on 2012 Mitsubishi Motors Badminton Horse Trials.